Hello Internet, my name is Rob and welcome to my channel, A Minor Error. In today's video, we're going to take an in-depth look at the Spark 40 practice amp. Before I get into this review, in an effort to be fully transparent, yes, Positive Grid did send me the amp and custom grill for free. They did also, yes, pay me to make social media content. But I will be completely honest about my opinions on this amp. They are not paying for this review. I'd also like to add that I like the amp enough that I then turn around and spend some of my own money on the optional carrying case to get it to and from my music school and here at home when I teach my virtual lessons. So hopefully that helps shed some suspicion of complete bias in this video. One of three practice amps by Positive Grid, the Spark 40 is the bigger brother of the smaller Spark Mini and the brand new, even teenier Spark Go. As the name implies, the Spark 40 is a 40-watt practice amp that features two 4-inch speakers and a tuned bass port. This amp's dimensions are 13 inches by 7 inches by 7 inches and weighs only 11 pounds. It also features other amp models besides electric guitar amps, which is pretty cool. So it features an acoustic guitar amp model as well as an electric bass guitar amp model. So if you're in need of practicing a different instrument other than just your electric guitar, they've got you covered. Optional accessories for the Spark amp include a $110 wireless Bluetooth foot switch, a $60 carrying case, and a $35 completely customizable grill for the amp. For amps and effects, the amp has you covered with 30 different amp models and 40 different commonly used effects. These effects are a noise gate, some compressors, some overdrive and distortion pedals, as well as modulation, delay, and reverb effects. Located on the top of the amp, there is a power switch that actually reminds me a lot of a real amp switch, as well as traditional knobs to control the most commonly used parameters on the amp. I'm going to go into loads of detail about the Spark app, but it is important to note that there is far more tweakability of this practice amp inside that app than there is on the top row of controls that are physically on the amp. There's a knob that allows quick access to commonly used different amp models. There's a knob dedicated just to control the amount of gain on each amp, as well as your traditional treble, mid, and bass EQ controls. There's a row of knobs that control the modulation, delay, and reverb effect send levels, allowing quick control to blend those different effects to your desired taste. Rounding out the rest of the control panel, there are a section for 4 different presets as well as a tap tempo button, and that tap tempo button, if you press and hold it, doubles as a tuner as well. And rounding out that top panel, you also get an 1/8-inch headphone jack as well as a teeny little volume knob to control any backing tracks you might be playing via the Spark app. Much more about that to come later on in this video. The back panel on the amp features a USB connection point, a spot to plug in your power supply to power the amp in the first place, an aux input, as well as a blue LED to show that Bluetooth is active on the amp. Via the USB jack on the back of the amp, you can connect it directly to a computer, and then the Spark can double essentially as a recording interface. So far, all of this is actually pretty standard modern digital practice amp features. But the thing that makes the Spark such an effective tool for practicing is the Spark app. Damn, there is a lot to cover in the Spark app. I'm going to do my best to cover all the features. I'm sure I'm going to leave something out. If I happen to leave something out, let me know down in the comments of what your favorite feature is. The first thing about the app is that it allows you full access to completely tweak all of the parameters and access all of the effects that are inside the digital brain, basically, of this practice amp. This includes 30 different amp models, so there's quite a lot of exploration to be done. It's important to point out that there is no way to tweak like the mic position on the cab, so you're basically stuck with whatever you get from the factory of the mic that's being used and the cabinet that's being used. There is no flexibility there like you can find in other digital products. The Spark does feature a EQ pedal though, which will definitely help give you far more flexibility to help dial in your tone for specifically what you're looking for. It's definitely important to point out that there is a wide range of effects within each category. You get 5 different compressors as well as 10 different overdrive pedals. I love that they included some great modulation effects as well, if you're going for that old school kind of Americana indie vibe. This includes a tremolo, a vibrato, a univibe, a phaser, and a fuzz. There's also a cool reverse and ambient effect, and although there is no wah included as stock, there is an optional upgrade in the Jimi Hendrix pack for a wah. Smart video capture allows you to capture your playing for quick and easy sharing, and voice control allows you to control the app hands-free. In the app, there's a dedicated section to search for different jam tracks where you're able to control the speed without affecting the pitch, as well as seeing a real-time analysis of the chords, which really helps jamming along a whole lot easier. Searching within this app, it appears that pretty much anything that is available on YouTube you'll be able to find in the app, and I was able to find my own music quickly and easily, which was awesome for jamming and playing along and practicing different difficult passages. It was really cool too to see the analysis of the chords of my own music in real time. I will admit the app got some of the chords wrong, but it was still in the ballpark, so if you're just looking to jam and play along, it's gonna give you the broad strokes of what the chords are, and that's gonna make, improvising and working on different concepts a whole lot easier, a whole lot more practical, and a whole lot quicker. It's also possible to save your preset that you were using to that particular jam track, as well as share it in the Spark Cloud. It is easy to get distracted by this mountain of features in this little practice amp, but let's address the elephant in the room. How does it actually sound as, an amp? I found there to be a ton of flexibility here for players of all genres, and I'm pretty confident, regardless of what genre you play in, you're going to be able to find a tone that works for you. I was able to cover anything from a nice, pristine, sparkling clean to slight amount of breakup and overdrive, all the way up to my typical modern metal, high gain, rhythm, and lead tones. Now obviously most of the time when you're using a practice amp, it's not that you're sitting there with your ear right up on the mic or even miking it anyway, you're kind of hearing the amp fill the room, and in that kind of a setting, I have found that the Spark exceeds exceptionally well with its dual 4-inch speakers and that tuned bass port. For this clip, I attempted to accomplish exactly that. I'm using my Deity D3 shotgun mic in an attempt to capture just how the amp sounded to me in the room. I will also have clips later on in this video showing the amp in a direct recording situation. In this clip, I'm also using the Spark app to jam and play along with my tune Untitled, which is off of my cover EP Doom Volume 1. I think my clip did a pretty good job capturing this amp and how it sounds in the room. To get an idea of what the Spark sounds like if you're going to record direct, I'm gonna jam and play along with my original track called 81 Years Past. For this clip, I'm not using the Spark app to play along with my track, but I did connect it directly to my computer. And I'm playing along with the backing track as well as the Spark amp mixed to a level inside my computer and then out of my interface directly into the camera to record the audio and video all at the same time. I then ran the metronome click track as well as the backing track out of another set of outputs on my Motu M2 interface and connected that to my wireless in-ear monitors so that I could play along and have good monitoring while I was playing. Let's talk about the good. The overall build quality is solid on this little practice amp. It's a sturdy speaker enclosure, but not overly heavy at just 11 pounds. All of the knobs on the controls of the amp are plastic, but they do feel pretty well made, and the digital encoders to control the amp operate smoothly and feel well made. This amp is super compact. I love the stereo design with the two speakers, and the Tolex is pretty well made. The custom grill is without a doubt a total gimmick, but so much fun. I had so much fun creating and designing my own custom grill and was really happy with the quality and overall look of the print once it was all done. There's a builder on the Positive Grid website for the custom grill that I found very easy to use. I used a combination of an Eddie Van Halen style artwork that happened to work really great with my original artwork already. So I was really happy with how it turned out. And being as the custom grill is only $35, it could even be fun to have a couple custom grills. They pop in and out super easily with just a screwdriver in a matter of seconds. I'll admit, I was perhaps a little too optimistic about the overall tone of the amp though. I was really hoping for something almost like a Neural DSP plugin and a little portable box I could take around. And unfortunately, in my opinion, the amp sims are not on the level of something that Neural DSP or maybe Axe-Fx is putting out. Now, my expectations were grossly unrealistic at only a $300 price point, and I think the design philosophy behind the amp, really focusing it on being a quality tool for practicing, is really what makes the amp stand apart. In my opinion, the clean and light gain tones were definitely slightly better than the high gain tones, and that's actually how I use the amp now when I'm teaching. I have a dedicated little pedal board and I use some high quality pedals running into the amp, and I found that the Spark is a fantastic pedal platform. So while the tones I found to be a bit lacking compared to something like from Neural DSP, I did find them to be completely usable and still very nice to play on. They just aren't industry leading, and they're lacking that extra layer of flexibility by being able to swap in and out different cabs and mics and then adjust the mic position on the cab. I would still consider the tones to be a positive and not a negative, even if they aren't industry leading. The app is overwhelmingly a huge win, although if you're not used to using an app or if you're not familiar with all of the toys that come along with it, you might be a bit overwhelmed by the sheer amount of amps to play with, the sheer amount of effects to play with, but all of the core classic key guitar tones are there. Just give it time, explore it if you're not familiar with them, but all of them are there. Having a wide range of different dirt pedals to push the different amps and color your tone and shape your tone is fantastic. And all of the classic pedals are here. There's very little stupid pedals or stupid effects that are just there to, pad the stat line for the sake of marketing. Let's talk negatives. In my opinion, I dislike that the power supply is not internal. In other words, you've got this brick that's attached to the power cord. It doesn't have your typical grounded 3-prong connection point, and that's a little bit disappointing in my opinion. Since the enclosure is the size it is, you would think they would be able to fit the power supply internally. It's also worthwhile to point out that I find the connection point where you plug the power supply in does feel a little bit fragile, and I'm kind of extra careful that I don't break it each time I plug it in or unplug it. Time will tell if my suspicions are correct about the durability of that power supply connection point. When using those traditional knobs on the top of the amp, there is a slight but very noticeable delay when you're tweaking the parameters as well. If you're used to using a physical real amp, there's something about that connection of just, being able to hear the change immediately, and there's a bit of a delay here. And I found many times I've wanted either a little bit less treble, a little bit more treble, a little less bass, and I've sort of overshot what I was trying to do and then had to tweak it a little bit extra. It's not the end of the world, but if you're, again, used to a physical amp, that is going to take a little bit, I think, to get used to. It's also worthwhile to point out, like pretty much every digital amp I've ever used, when you change presets, that means that the knobs don't automatically change to reflect their setting because they are not digital, they're physical. This means for dialing the amp, it's far preferred to do it actually in the app, because then you can actually see where you are. You know, if you want more treble and you go to change it, and the setting was wildly different, when you switch it, maybe the treble goes completely away. You know, it's not where you think it is on the knob when you change between presets. That just is what it is. That makes dialing in the app far preferred. But while I find the app to be outstanding and the features fantastic, in my opinion, the display of the amps and the effects are far too small and make tweaking them in the app far too tedious than it should be. So while this might change in the future, currently, if you're using the app and you go from portrait to landscape, it does not reorient the display. In other words, it doesn't make those controls bigger and then therefore easier to tweak, so they just stay teeny. This might change in the future with an app update or firmware update, and I really hope it does. Right now, I find it to be very irritating to try to grab this little knob and turn it up or down a little bit. It's far too tedious in my opinion. The jam tracks in the app can only be slowed down in certain increments, and I find the increments to be too large to be useful as a teaching device for my students. So a lot of times, you know, if I'm teaching a little kid, let's say Smoke on the Water, what I'll do is I'll pull up the song on YouTube, and if you're using desktop, you can slow the video down in increments of 5, which is perfect for teaching, especially a new student, a song. Maybe 50% is way too slow, we need 65%, or 75 is just a little too slow and we need 85%, and unfortunately you do not have that amount of flexibility directly in the Spark app. So while this may change in the future, currently the version of the app that I was using only allowed you to slow it down to 50%, 80%, or full speed, and that did not provide enough flexibility for my students. The carrying strap on the amp as well could honestly be in either category. It's kind of up to you. I find it to be slightly awkward in my opinion. I would have preferred just a regular old handle right on the top of the amp. This carrying strap is very simple. It's basically just a faux leather strap that's connected with what kind of looks like traditional guitar strap points to hold it onto the amp. The advantage here is that if you want a real clean look, you can remove the strap altogether, which I have done, but then I have found it's a little kind of tricky to grip the amp and move it. You know, let's say you drop a pick on the floor and it bounces behind the amp or something. To grip and hold the amp on the smoother Tolex without that strap on it is a little tricky, and as I mentioned earlier, with that connection point to the power supply seeming slightly fragile, potentially dropping the amp is a possibility and damaging it. So I would have personally preferred just a traditional old, you know, handle right on the top of it. With that optional carrying case for the amp, this strap gets kind of mangled inside the case as well. It doesn't really fit cleanly. A regular old handle would have been better in my opinion, but you know, this is definitely subjective. You might really like the fact that the carrying strap can be removed altogether. And let's talk about some of the optional extras that you can get for the Spark 40. Let's start with the optional carrying case. I've been taking the amp back and forth from my music school here in Philadelphia that I work at, called Rockdale Music, as well as taking it to some private mobile lessons, and kind of quickly discovered that I really needed a case to protect the amp from the elements. It seemed like it was always raining on the days where I had to be traveling with the amp. This $60 water-resistant padded case provides that protection that I needed from the elements. The good here is that it is water-resistant, and it has a decent amount of padding to help protect the amp as well. It has some nice handles for carrying it, as well as an optional shoulder strap. The padding is pretty solid, and the overall feel of the cloth that the case is made out of is pretty nice and seems like it's going to be pretty durable to last a number of years. It's also worthwhile to point out that there are rubber feet on the bottom of this case, so if you do have to set it down on a wet surface, the case is not going to immediately get soaked and potentially just wick all that water up into the amp. The amp fits very snugly into the case, which I really like, except that that leather carrying strap gets kind of mangled, and if you remove the leather carrying strap, getting the amp in and out of this snug case is a total chore. So you do want to keep it on it, but just be aware it is going to get kind of mangled in there. There is a decent sized pouch on the outside of the case where I usually put that kind of bulky power supply that I don't like, as well as a small netted area inside the case where you could put some extra stuff like maybe a guitar cable. The big negative of the carrying case is the zippers feel incredibly fragile. I mean, every time I open or close the case, I am super worried that the zippers are going to break. They get a little caught on the corners because it is such a snug, tight-fitting case, and like I said, just every time I'm convinced they're about to break and I'm gonna have to take it somewhere and either get it repaired or buy a whole nother case. I also wish the handles that are attached on the case had a way of combining both of them together. It's a very small thing, but when you're traveling, it's a little tedious to have to spend a second to try to get the two handles together. I never use the optional shoulder strap to carry the Spark 40. My pedal board is like a backpack, and I also have a case with a shoulder strap for my laptop. So I always carry it by hand, which feels a little sturdy as it's heavier, but I just wish there was a way of looping that together. It would make it quicker and easier, a little more secure to pick up before you hit the road. All in all, I'd say the carrying case is an 8 out of 10 though. Let's talk about the $110 Bluetooth wireless foot switch. Now, while I do not have the foot switch, it is wireless and it is Bluetooth. And looking on the Positive Grid website, you can assign the foot switches to control basically whatever parameter you want. So it does have a ton of flexibility. The positives here are pretty obvious. Being as it's wireless, that's going to make traveling and setting up before jamming and playing with friends, or even maybe trying to use the amp at a small gig, very quick and easy. The factory settings of the foot switch are to change between your different presets, engage or disengage the pedals, and stop or rewind the backing tracks that are playing within the Spark app. It comes with 4 different factory preset banks that can be overwritten, as well as 4 custom preset banks for your own settings. This will give you loads of flexibility to set up the Spark amp for exactly what works for your workflow. So while I don't have any experience with the foot switch, I cannot comment on its build quality. To me, the negative is that price. $110 in my opinion is just far too much, even if it is a wireless Bluetooth foot switch. That is over a third of the price for the whole amp to begin with. I think somewhere between $50 to $80 would have been a much more reasonable price point for all of the features that you're getting there. And let's talk about that custom grill. For only $35, you can order a completely customized grill for your Spark. It is unbelievably easy to pop these on and off. I used a screwdriver just to get in the corner and pop the grill right off. And they attach with just little pieces of Velcro that are already pre-applied on the new custom grill and stapled in place in the actual amp itself. This is fantastic. I absolutely love the custom grill. It is a total gimmick, but no other company is offering something like this. This is such a no-brainer. I don't understand why other companies like Mesa don't make these custom amp grills as well. It would be so cool to get a custom amp grill for my Mesa Mark 525. It would just be so cool to see more companies implement this. Very well done on the part of Positive Grid. The only negative of the custom grill is that mine didn't seem to fit quite as snugly as the factory grill that came with it. It still fits well and it's never like fallen out or something like that, but it's just not quite as snug as that factory grill. I will admit, I didn't even realize how badly I needed a new practice amp to help me teach. I had already been using my small pedal board with some Fender Mustang practice amps and it sounded fine, but the improvement in tone over that Fender Mustang is remarkable. And this has proven to be a fantastic platform for teaching. I'm really getting some fantastic tones out of a very small portable setup that works absolutely incredible for teaching. So again, a huge thanks to Positive Grid for sending me this amp. I'm currently using it 7 days a week on my lessons, both virtual and in person, and it's really rounded out a fantastic small mobile rig that I can use for teaching. The speaker cabinet really is solid and well made, and I really like the quality of the Tolex that they've covered the speaker cabinet with. Being as this is a digital amp, hopefully we're in store for more firmware updates and additional effects later on down the road. I don't know the limitations of the DSP that's inside the amp, but hopefully, we'll continue to get firmware updates and improvements to the amp and the overall display and operating system over time. With the aux output as well as USB connection points, there really is a ton of flexibility here. Even besides just using it as a practice amp, I could totally see a scenario where an acoustic guitar player wants to use some of those onboard effects on a Spark and then uses the aux out to run it into a PA system. That could be another great use for this amp besides its intended purpose, really just as a practice amp. Now, despite adding up all those optional extras and the price coming to a little bit over $500, which is getting a bit pricey, I would say, in my opinion, for just a practice amp, if you're going just the amp itself and the custom grill, I do think with the inclusion of the Spark amp and how great that is as a practice tool, it really is a worthwhile investment. You will be more efficient in your practice time by using the app. That I can definitely guarantee. I've discovered loads of backing tracks that are fun to jam on. You can quickly save them in the app and then recall them again in the future, and I found it to be a very, very useful practice tool for myself as well as for other students. The customized option for the grill is a ton of fun for personalizing the amp and making it your own. I love that I have a branded piece of gear. It's just so much fun, and I really hope other companies will take note and add it to their roster of products. So thank you for watching this video. Again, I just want to thank Positive Grid for sending me this product to check it out. I definitely recommend it and think that it is worthwhile to check out.